There we go. Okay, May 12th. We just wrote the quiz 5 minutes ago. We're going to take it up quickly. Very first 3 questions ask you to name whether things are periodic or not periodic. The first object they've given you takes roughly this shape. Okay. Is this a repeating pattern? Yes. So is it periodic? Yes. Good. I'm assuming most of you got that. Next one. I haven't drawn it perfect, but is this a repeating pattern? Is it periodic? Finally. Okay. Is this a repeating pattern? No. This is not a repeating pattern. The peaks, well, that was terrible, are completely different every time. Same with the troughs. So that means this is not a repeating pattern. Therefore, it is not periodic. You guys okay with that? That took us a minute 45 to take up. It was that simple. Okay. And the big question. Here's the very important part of this big question here. Okay. So this question is asked you to graph a sine wave. What number was this? Apparently it was number 1, 2. Should have been 3. Okay. They wanted you to graph this function, which is a sine wave. Very first thing you guys need to realize is they've asked you to graph it between 0 and 360. Whoa. So in the question, it tells you that this is between 0 and 360 degrees. That means that the x-axis is written in degrees. So we have 90, 180, 270, and 360. Okay? That means we only had the graph from 0 to 360. Okay? Now, when drawing a circle, this is why I told you guys to please think of a circle. So let's say we have a circle here. When we start drawing this circle, we're going to say we started here. And remember, that's the equation of the axis, even though I didn't even ask you for that part. The radius of this circle is going to be 1. Assume we always have a radius of 1. So that means to the top, it's 1. To the bottom is 1. Across is 1. Back is 1. 1, 1, 1, 1. That means on our y-axis, we really only need to go as high as 1 and as low as negative 1. Okay? We start at 0. When I start at 0, I talked about 5 major key points. The first one, the very first coordinate, let's write that down, is 0 and 0. Okay? I said to include 5 key points. From 0 and 0, I move up to the peak. The peak is how many degrees from where I started? 90. So after 90 degrees, I'm at 1. Then as I go down the circle, when I get to this point here, when I'm even again at 0, how far have I traveled in degrees? 180 degrees. 180. You guys ever watch Darts? 180. No? Okay. Same idea. From the 0, I then head below 0 down to -1 from where I started. And in that case, I've moved how many degrees? 270. And finally, back at the start, 360. So, I'm going to quickly show you this part, and I'm going to show you how with a calculator you could have solved this. So, gentlemen, if you watch this part, our key points are 90 degrees and 1, 0 and 0, 180 degrees and 0, 270 degrees and -1, and finally 360 degrees and 0 again. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 major points of the sine graph I've shown you. If you didn't remember that, there was another way you could have solved this. I'm going to quickly show you. Okay, so with the calculator, you could have also solved this. Okay? Remember, I told you in the question that I wanted you to graph it between 0, x, remember referring to x, and 360 degrees. So that means this is our x-axis and our y-axis. Once again, I know that my x-axis is just going to go from 0 to 360. You had enough room. You could have gone up by 10s. I'm going to quickly just go by 90 here for the sake of the period because we don't have a lot of time left. He deferred to me. It was very nice of him. Okay? One way I could have solved this, and sorry, we needed to start at 0. I could have actually put into the calculator sine at 0 equals 0. Okay, there's my very first point. Sine at when x is 0, I'll do it in red just to see the differences. Sine at 0, we're at 0. I could have put in other points. I'm going to put in the major ones for now. Sine at 90. One person did start to figure this out. I was very impressed. Sine at 90 is what? 1. So, when I'm at 90, oh, I forgot to draw 1.
I did that.
There's 1.
But I didn't do it.
Sine at 180. Make sure you guys watch this. Sine at 180. 0 again. There we go. I have another point. Sine at 270. -1. And sine at 360 is going to be 0. Now here's, okay, gentlemen, so part of this is you're drawing a wave. So many of you may have thought, okay, if I had this, what's that magic pen? Many of you may have decided to draw it like this. That wouldn't have been right. And you can prove it with the calculator by putting in numbers in between. So I'm going to put sine at 45. That would have been halfway between 0 and 90. Sine at 45, 0.7. So 0.7 at 45, that means I'm somewhere around here. So if you notice, this is not going to be a straight line. I could have got even more accurate. Sine at, let's say, 80. 0.98, so I know I'm getting really close, but I'm not quite at 1. So if I plotted all the points, I would end up getting a curve-like feature. It would start to come down again. That's right. It would take a very long time to put them all in. That's why I only asked for 5 major points. And eventually we would have gotten to there when you connect the dots, just like kindergarten. Ooh, I barely passed kindergarten. That would have been our wave. So you could have solved this with a calculator. I had never shown you that before. I'm quite impressed somebody had started to figure that out. Please know how to do this, because maybe I'll ask you about another feature on your calculator on a test, something like cosine. and I'll ask you to graph it, even though I've never shown you how. Please know how to do it with a calculator. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Make sure you have one for this test. I may ask you to do that with cosine. Sorry, let's quickly talk about the amplitude, period, domain, and range. So let's go back. If you guys remember, your amplitude, you would take a peak and a trough, subtract them, and divide by 2. So, 1 subtract -1 divided by 2. This is for our amplitude. Oh, I shouldn't have written that. This is 3. By 2. That gives us 1 plus 1 is 2 divided by 2. Our amplitude is 1. And if you remember, our amplitude is the distance from the equation of the axis, which runs right through the middle, to the peak. Oops. Or to a trough. Both instances, it's going to be 1. It's the exact same as the radius of the circle. So our amplitude is 1 in this case. Our period starts here, goes down. We're back at 0, but I'm not approaching it from the same spot. So I have to pass that and come around. So a period of a sine function is how many degrees? Can anyone tell me? I start at 0. And period deals with the x-axis. 360 degrees. So the period is 360 degrees. I only wanted you to draw one period of the graph. Okay? And finally, domain and range. Remember, our domain, element of all real numbers. I actually gave you the domain in the question. I only wanted you to draw between 0 and 360. So that was your domain. The range, though, went as high as 1 and as low as -1. That is your domain and range. Anything else? Period, amplitude? I repeated the question in the quiz, but it's fine. There you go, just for you. Okay.